But we've got news on Calvin Phillips, and it could be hammer time for him. See you in a moment.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long? And wouldn't it be nice to live together?
Sky
As Bayern Munich threaten to pull out of a move for Kieran Trippier, does Miguel Almiron hold the key to Newcastle's hopes of signing a midfielder this month? Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. We'll also have the very latest from West Ham. Calvin Phillips could be the first of a couple of deals for them. Dharmesh chef Melissa Reddy, and I'm delighted to say former England striker Leanne Sanderson with us tonight. Now, plenty of live football on the way this evening. Liverpool go to Fulham with a one-goal advantage in their Carabao Cup semi-final. Chelsea await the winners. In the Championship, Leeds take on Norwich. We'll have the goals as they go in. And the focus at Bayern Munich will be on the pitch for the next couple of hours. They can move 4 points behind Bundesliga leaders Bayer Leverkusen with victory over Union Berlin. Right, let's start with Newcastle. Things could be about to get busy in the northeast with 8 days of the window to go. News surrounding the future of Kieran Trippier has been dominating, but could the future of Miguel Almiron hold the key to their pursuit of a midfielder? Keith Downey has the latest.
Interesting use of language by Sky Germany today, who tell us Bayern Munich are pulling away from their move for Kieran Trippier and haven't quite pulled away just yet. Is that a game of poker by the German champions, or have they decided that 3 offers is enough? Of course, the last of those, £13 million for Trippier, was rejected by Newcastle last night. Elsewhere, Newcastle remain in talks with Saudi Pro League club Al Shabab for Paraguayan winger Miguel Almiron. While that feels as though that one is still alive, as far as Almiron is concerned, he's happy and settled here on Tyneside. Newcastle, though, of course, they need to sell to be able to purchase this January transfer window. Eddie Howe really wants to bring in a midfielder to try and add to that position. They've got a few injuries in midfield at the moment, and it feels as though out of the 3 players who have been linked with moves away, Almiron, Callum Wilson and Trippier, Almiron the most likely due to the transfer fee that Newcastle could command.
Keith Downey at St James's Park for us. Dharmesh, let's start with Trippier. Are Bayern Munich trying to play clever here?
If you just look at it on the face of it, and we take everyone at their word, Newcastle United say he's not for sale. Bayern Munich have tried to sign him, and Newcastle have basically said he's not for sale, so they're not going to get him. But we continually are hearing that Newcastle United are saying that Kieran Trippier is not for sale, and yet Bayern Munich have gone back 3 times. So are Newcastle United actually hammering home that message to Bayern Munich, or is there maybe just a little bit of light there for Bayern Munich to work with, for them to keep going back to Newcastle United and maybe test that resolve of not for sale? But as it stands, it's clear that Newcastle United don't want to let him go, and it's easy to see why. He's been such a key player for them. He's effectively the first signing in the new regime, whereas Bayern Munich, we know that they want to bring in a right back of such experience as well. But as it stands, and if we hear what Keith Downey was saying there, and we take it on face value, not for sale means he's not going anywhere.
On Bayern as well, they're in separate negotiations with PSG for Nordi Mukile, and he was their first choice to cure this position. Yet they've had a stumbling block with PSG, who want an obligation to buy, and they wanted to bring in a replacement before they continued talks with Bayern. But for the fact that they are still in discussions and there's no not for sale or we're not willing to do business, it could give an indication of why Bayern are cooling on the Trippier side, because they're making some headway with PSG.
Leanne, if you were a Newcastle fan, would you be pulling your hair out? You're the richest club in the world, and yet people are looking like they're going to have to go out of the club before you can bring anyone in.
Well, obviously with FFP now in full swing, I think ultimately the bad decisions that have been made in the last few years are the reasons why this is happening. Now, these three players that are linked to being away, Almiron, Callum Wilson and Trippier, like, they're three top players, and realistically, who can they bring in that's better than what productivity they're bringing to Newcastle? So it's due to their wrong decisions off the field of play why these things are happening. But for me, I remember when Kieran Trippier signed for Newcastle last year, and I actually said, that was the best signing of the window, based upon the fact of when he went from Tottenham to Atletico Madrid, I couldn't believe Tottenham let him go so easily. I know we had one not-so-great season, but we all have bad seasons, we all have bad games. But I think, with regards to them not being able to bring anyone in and out, if you don't make the right decisions off the field of play, then ultimately it's going to come back and bite you. But these three players, Almiron last year especially was absolutely brilliant. Callum Wilson, he will guarantee goals, but so does Alexander Isak, but he's always injured a lot of the time. We know how good he is, but both of them seem to flip-flop who's injured at any given time. So, yeah, I think, with Almiron potentially linked to going to Saudi Arabia, is that really a good move for him? I'm not quite sure. But the fact they're in this position, they've got no one left to blame but themselves.
Is Almiron the most likely, Darmesh?
It certainly appears that way. Callum Wilson, the link with Callum Wilson sort of came and went, and I don't think Newcastle were interested in selling, and they're clearly not interested in selling Kieran Trippier. The Almiron one is really, really interesting simply because he would probably get the most transfer fee, and that would probably sort out Newcastle United just to get out of this little hole that they find themselves in. Al-Shabaab, we're told, are confident that they can get that deal over the line. They're in talks with Newcastle United, but significantly, Keith Downey's been telling us that he's been speaking to people close to Almiron who say he doesn't want to leave Tyneside and he's settled at Newcastle and he doesn't want to go. Another source that I've spoken to says that it's just the personal terms that's the stumbling block at the moment. So if a deal can be agreed between the two clubs, where they're still talking, and the personal terms can just be increased that little bit more to tempt Miguel Almiron to think, I do want to stay, but this is money that maybe I can't refuse, then there's nothing to say that this deal potentially can't happen yet. But of the three, Newcastle United would probably want to do business on Almiron rather than the other two.
Leanne, you're a footballer, former footballer.
I was going to say, used to be.
So you know the situation. If you're a player and someone's trying to ship you off somewhere you don't want to go, can you sit tight?
It's difficult because ultimately you sign a contract and you think that means you're going to be at the club for a number of years. It doesn't work that way. If the club want you gone, then you're out. And I also believe when a player wants to leave, you should probably let them leave, because it could cause unrest in the changing room and those types of things. But I feel for Eddie Howe, because ultimately when the takeover happened, he was asked a lot of questions that he couldn't really answer, because it was to do with obviously being a Saudi Arabian, teams and takeover and those types of things. And ultimately the managers are just there to manage and the players are there to play. Ultimately, sometimes you're asked loads of questions as a player that you might not know the answer to. You're just a footballer that happens to be good. But I love Eddie Howe. I've always been a big fan of him. Even when he was at Bournemouth, I thought he did a really good job, and he almost waited for the right opportunity. Newcastle came along, he took that job, and I feel like whenever they go on a bad run, everybody questions if he should be at the club. People thought he was going to be a stopgap, which I thought was a bit disrespectful to Eddie Howe, because I think he's a good manager, and he's showing that. Then making the Champions League, they were unlucky, really, really strange decision in Paris. So they could have been, coulda, woulda, shoulda's another thing. But I always felt like this season they would struggle a little bit with the fact they were in the Champions League and playing Premier League on the weekends is difficult, and their squad depth, let's be honest, isn't that great, is it? We all thought they were going to sign Mbappe, Neymar and Messi when the takeover happened. And I think they've done good business since the takeover happened. But ultimately, people are going to expect bigger things this year from Newcastle United based upon how well they did last year.
Leanne loves Eddie Howe. How much pressure is Eddie Howe under?
I think as much pressure as you can expect him to be under, based on the standards he set himself for Newcastle. And much of the reason they are where they are, there obviously has been investment in the squad, but it's been largely his coaching ability. And I think in this situation, we're speaking about Newcastle being hamstrung by the profit and sustainability rules, but you look across the league and we've had one permanent signing for a senior squad in the entire window. That is biting everybody deep. It's not just, Newcastle have all this money and they can't spend it. Everybody's being a lot more frugal January is a difficult market naturally, but I think that's enhanced it because people see that it has teeth now. There are points deductions involved. But we're also in a situation where we have a window during 2 international tournaments taking place, the AFCON and the Asia Cup. So the small pool of players that you have decreases even further because a lot of them can't negotiate and they can't come and make an immediate impact, which is what you want in January. So I think when we bear all this in mind and know that Eddie Howe is working, within his means, and he has to continue bringing out the best of his coaching ability to maximise what Newcastle can do, then I don't think anybody would be putting any additional pressure on him bar what the situation dictates.
Well, we know that Newcastle were linked with Calvin Phillips. It now looks like he's on his way to West Ham, Dharmesh. How close is this?
This looks really close. Now, he's back in the UK with the rest of the Manchester City squad after they had warm weather training in Abu Dhabi. He's expected in London tomorrow morning, where he will have a medical with West Ham United. All being well, this deal should be completed before the weekend. And one source has even told me it could be done in the next 24 to 48 hours. It is a deal that is a loan spell until the end of the season, but we understand that West Ham United do have an option to make that loan deal a permanent deal in the summer. A price on that option is not out there, but one person has told me it's in the region of around £35 million. Now, there's no real rush to get it done and over the line by the weekend because it's FA Cup weekend and West Ham United are out. The next game that they do have is actually on deadline day night against Bournemouth at the London Stadium. And as long as Calvin Phillips is registered by midday on Wednesday, the 31st, then he is available to be part of that squad for West Ham United. But this one increasingly looking like when and not if Calvin Phillips becomes a West Ham player.
Leanne, good signing for the Hammers?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I love the fact we're talking about all the people I love. Genuinely, because you know me, Mike, I'll say if I don't like something. But I love Calvin Phillips. I mean, I'm really, when I say surprised it hasn't worked out at Manchester City, because very rarely do players go there and not succeed. You know, even when Pep Guardiola brought in Akanji, people were thinking, where's he going to play? He's been brilliant. It was like 25 mil or something like that. You know, even though I'm a Manchester United fan, he's never going to come to Man United being a Leeds boy, but I would have welcomed him with open arms at Manchester United. I think this is a brilliant signing for West Ham. Hasn't worked out at Manchester City, but I've no doubt that he's a top player. I loved him when he was in the Championship with Leeds. You know, the guy can ping a ball on a rope.
Yeah.
And he's got the ability. Gav Southgate saw that. We saw that in the Euros when he was playing in the 2 with Declan Rice. And ultimately, he needs to be playing. I've said it before, Gav Southgate will pick players, as we've seen, that don't need to be playing because he's still being picked for England, you know, when he's not playing for club. But I think this is a brilliant signing for West Ham, absolutely brilliant. And I think that's quite cheap, Dom, what you said. 35 mil, I think that's relatively cheap.
This is the interesting part of it, because sometimes when you have a situation with a player like Calvin Phillips, he's still got 4.5 years left on his contract. So the assumption earlier on in the window was he'd go for 6 months. He'd still have 4 years left on his contract, and imagine he plays really well, plays every week, goes to the Euros, plays really well for England as well. Manchester City still have him, and then they can almost dictate the market value for Calvin Phillips. It can almost act as a little edge and an incentive for a club to take the loan deal and say, look, we want you to have the loan, but there is an option. But Man City, it is quite a high option considering he hasn't played. I know we're talking about Calvin Phillips at his absolute peak, but £35 million, they'll be recouping the majority of the money that they paid Leeds United. So in one way, you can understand why they put the option in. In another way, you can think, could they have taken a little risk here by not putting an option in, and then him playing really, really well for West Ham United? Suddenly, more clubs will be interested in Calvin Phillips come the summer, and then that can drive the price up. But say West Ham United don't take up the option and he still has a good 6 months there, that can still act in the same way as if it was a straight loan, because then Manchester City will have a player who's performed well, who more likely than not will be going to the Euros, and then they can tell clubs, well, he's actually going to cost you this much, because look how well he's played, he's still got it.
I have no doubt, though, that he will be a success at West Ham. I don't know why, I could be wrong, but I still think there's a player in there, just hasn't worked out. But I do believe he's got that little bit of X factor that I think can work at a really top club.
Melissa, why hasn't it worked out for him at City?
I think the injury, initially, for him, it's such a hard place to go and adapt with Pep Guardiola's demands, especially in that number 6 position, which is so specialised. And we've seen examples of it when Rodri doesn't play, how much City struggle without that anchor that reads that position exactly the way Guardiola wants it to be played. There's also, I think once you don't acclimatise well and you're on the back foot, when you're in such a winning machine, you then have more ground to make up. I also think that there's no questions over Calvin Phillips' professionalism, his conditioning, any of those things. So West Ham are ultimately getting what they want, which is steel, stability, more experience in their central area. They're getting a player who can play, like Leanne said, in a double pivot, as we've seen with Declan Rice, but also in a single pivot on his own. His short passing game, his long distribution, everything you'd want from a midfielder. He gives you the combativeness. You know, the question mark will be, he hasn't really played much football. 2 Premier League starts in 18 months is not enough. Then the injury concerns. But he's a player with the right attitude, a player who backs himself, and in the right environment, like we've seen with England, he can thrive. The other point I wanted to make on Manchester City, they're actually not in the habit of stopping players from leaving to pursue greater game time. No matter how good the player is, we haven't seen them stand in anybody's way.
Maybe
and actually,
Bernardo Silva.
Yeah,
He was talking about going, and Pep was not
even
letting
then,
him go.
Pep would say if he wants to
if
go,
he
then
really wanted to go, he could go. And I think with Bernardo, what happened was so many other players had gone that they were in a position where City were like, well, do you really want to leave? And he was like, well, not particularly. And, I mean, Bernardo Silva has been an excellent player for them. There's no one that City have... Gabriel Jesus, Raheem
Zinchenko,
Sterling, to rivals as well.
Cancelo.
Yeah, they're very good at letting players leave to get more game time while they also evolve. It works out for everyone.
Yeah, OK. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Leanna's insisted we talk about Manchester United. We will do that and bring you loads more transfer news as well. See you in a moment.
My lover stands on golden sand and watches
Oh, if a normal holiday is a movie, a P&O Cruises holiday is a box set.
14-night Caribbean holidays from $1099 per person. P&O Cruises. Holiday like never before. At all protected.
Get that Euro Millions feeling.
Jump in the line, rock your body and
With this Friday's £110 million super jackpot.
rock your body and time. Okay, I believe you. Jump in the line, rock your body and
Euro Millions from the National Lottery.
Finally, you can have the fancy tap, the dream pantry, and the sparkly quartz. Because we're Ren, here to shake up the shakers. We're renovators of the kitchen industry, bringing everyone, yes everyone, the kitchen of their dreams. Luxury for all, affordable for all. Join us. This is the Great Renovation.
You're looking good, you're looking sharp. You've come so far.
Put your best face forward every day with Gillette Labs. A razor unlike any other, with unique exfoliating bar, pivoting flex disc, and 5 long-lasting blades. For exceptional comfort and closeness in one effortless stroke.
You've shown your best for everyone. Gillette, the best.
Gillette Labs, for the best a man can get.
Ocado matches your shop to Tesco.com on over 10,000 products. Get the price promise that really stacks up.
Want to buy your next car your way? At Car Store, you can search thousands of cars online or pay us a visit. Chat to an advisor face-to-face or talk to us online or by phone. You can buy online or in person. Then simply drive it away. Or let us deliver it to your door. Welcome to car buying that revolves around you. Welcome to Car Store.
I woke up this morning so fresh and brand new.
Come to Holland & Barrett to get your year off to a glowing start with expertly formulated products to support your immunity, energy, digestive health and more.
Sky Store Premiere. Watch brand new movies at home while they're in the cinema.
What are you doing? What are you gonna do, Willie?
I got an idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Willy Wonka. Mark my words.
Wonka. Available now to buy or rent in Sky Store Premiere while it's in the cinema.
The NFL Conference Championships kick off as the Ravens face the Chiefs and the 49ers play the Detroit Lions. Live on Sky Sports.
The best memory that I have in my entire life is the day that I hearing impairment, cancer. I was forced to use a wheelchair. I needed a way out of my reality, and that's why I made the choice to commit murder.
The Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Mondays from 9 on Crime and Investigation.
Now, the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg between Fulham and Liverpool kicks off at 8 o'clock. Now, Fulham trail by a goal. They've made two changes from the side that lost to Chelsea in the Premier League at the weekend. Timothy Castagna and Bobby De Cordova-Reid are in for Kenny Tete and Harry Wilson. Bernd Leno continues in goal. What about Liverpool? Well, they've made four changes from the 4-0 victory over Bournemouth. Quaveen Kelleher replaces Alisson in goal. Jarell Quansah, Cody Gakpo and Ryan Gravenberch replace Curtis Jones, Diogo Jota and Ibrahima Konate. Updates and goals as they go in here on Sky Sports News throughout the evening. Right, back to the transfer news. Gio Reyna to Nottingham Forest. Melissa, is that a goer?
Nottingham Forest are pushing very hard for that loan deal with a purchase option for the 21-year-old. But the problem is there's a twist. Marseille are now also in negotiations with Borussia Dortmund for him. If people remember, Gio actually changed agents in December and is now represented by Mendes. So it's no surprise that he's been offered to multiple parties, because that will give him the power of choice. He can select where he thinks he'll get the most game time, and I think that's what his decision now comes down to. It won't be about money and stuff, because at 21, what he ultimately wants to be doing is playing regularly. He had an injury at the start of the season, which curtailed him a bit, and he hasn't really featured much after that. I think he's made something like 13 appearances, mostly cameo roles. So, yeah, Marseille in the equation, Nottingham Forest in the equation. When you read reports in France, it seems like Marseille are quite confident, but Forest have done most of the heavy lifting here, and I think they'll push really hard to get it done and dusted.
What's your view on this one, Leanne?
It's a weird one, because I saw him play a lot for NYCFC, and then he got the move to Borussia Dortmund, which I was quite surprised at. And you touched upon it there, Melissa. You know, he's injured a lot. There's definitely a player in there for sure, but last year, you know, he kept picking up hamstring injury, muscular injuries. There was a period of time he was out for 5 months. So if he can stay fit and healthy, there's no doubt there's a player in there. And then, of course, there was a lot of drama off the field of play with Greg Berhalter and his dad, Claudio Reyna. So there was a massive cloud over him. I felt like going into this season with all that drama that was happening. There's no doubt there's a player in there, but he just doesn't stay fit enough for me. And it's not easy as a player when you're always injured. So that's the only question mark I have over Gio Reyna, is that will he be fit enough on a consistent basis to be able to get, you know, to help Nottingham Forest? But it's quite a crazy, you know, from Dortmund to Forest. It's quite a crazy transition.
OK, we will see. We've got some breaking news. Darmesh, what have you got?
Yeah, this is concerning a player called Carlos Borges, but he actually wants to be called Carlos Forbes. Now, Manchester City fans will remember him. He was part of the under-23 squad for the past few seasons. He was very close to joining West Ham United in the summer. He instead chose to go to Ajax in a deal worth £16.3 million. Now, Melissa was saying about Gio Reyna, Nottingham Forest being interested in signing him and pushing for a deal for him. We've already reported as well that Carlos Forbes is a player that Nottingham Forest are pushing to sign as well. In the past few minutes, I'm told that Burnley are also interested in signing Carlos Forbes as well, potentially. Of course, when he would have known him from his Manchester City days as well. I think Forbes will want to go to a club where he is going to get regular first-team football. He's been to Ajax, he's made 12 starts in all competitions, and he scored 2 goals. I wonder whether he would get those starts he wanted if he was to go to Nottingham Forest ahead of Burnley or the other way around. If you look at Nottingham Forest, players like Callum Hudson-Odoi might be ahead of him in the pecking order, given his age and his experience. But Burnley could be a club that will come in and say, look, come to Burnley instead. We'll be able to offer you a little bit more regular first-team football than if you were to go elsewhere. So definitely one to watch in the last week.
OK, I'm going to break away from the transfers because there's loads of football going on tonight. In the Conti Cup, Reading are playing Arsenal. Jamie Weir is there. There's been a goal. Jamie.
There has indeed, Mike, and it's gone to the defending champions, Arsenal. A constant wave after wave of attack from Arsenal. Reading are just camped in their defensive third, and finally all that pressure told Stina Blackstenius with a perfectly weighted pass right into the path of Caitlin Ford, who scored for the second game running to put Arsenal 1-0 in front. But there will be more goals in this game. The gulf in class between these two sides is quite evident at the moment. It's just constant wave after wave of Arsenal pressure. Eva Netz in the Reading goal has had a lot of work to do already, and we're just approaching half an hour gone here. 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Jamie Weir, thank you very much. Right, back to the transfers. Now, the French media agency, AFP, reported yesterday that Karim Benzema wanted a short-term move away from the Saudi Pro League. Melissa, not true. Tell us why.
According to Karim Benzema and his camp, it's definitively not true. I think he called it completely false, said the media are making up rumours, and yet the French media are saying, actually, this story stemmed from your club. It stemmed from Al Ittihad. So they're calling it a communication war. There's a lot of friction between Benzema and the club because he was very late to turn up to training. He's been left out of their camp that they're doing at the moment. So a feeling of isolation between him and the club and competing agendas being pushed forward. But if you look at it, for the Saudi League to lose Benzema, who, you know, along with Cristiano Ronaldo and Neymar are really their pillars of attraction to this league and who they built it around. I think his contract is something like 200 million euros until 2026. So one, a poster boy for it. Two, the fact that no one else can really afford him in world football. There's no really exit options for him. It's a really bizarre tale. And when you listen to the club, they say he's not going anywhere until the summer anyway. So why we have these competing stories from the club, from Benzema and from the French media themselves is anyone's guess.
Could this be a PR exercise, though, as well, on behalf of Karim Benzema? I'm just looking at this cynically. Okay, imagine the scenario where Karim Benzema does actually want to go. And we've been saying that it would represent such a loss of face from the Saudi Pro League if he was to leave that league within 6 months of him arriving. So if they've made it categorically clear to him, you're not going anywhere, maybe it might be in Benzema's interest to say, no, this story is not true. I don't want to go anywhere. And if you think about how any potential deal would work, a short-term deal away from the Saudi Pro League, do we genuinely think the Saudi Pro League are going to allow Karim Benzema, carry on, and we'll carry on supplementing your wages to whichever club you go to?
There's also tax implications as well with a lot of the players, you know, like Jordan Henderson's had to forego his whole salary based upon that. And I was wondering what Nuno Espirito Santo's doing at Forest, because he's come back quite quickly and there's a lot of tax implications for that type of stuff because, you know, Karim Benzema being on that much money a year, that's unbelievable. But ultimately, I think some players are going to the Saudi League and are OK with it being not many people there. And they're going there saying they want to grow the league. No, for me, a lot of them are going there for money, which is absolutely fine, because I would, you know, and I wish that players would just say that. And I think some players still have it in them, still have that fire in their stomachs where they get there, like a Jordan Henderson, and think, actually, I want to kick on. I know Jordan Henderson's 33, but he still wants to play for England. He still has that ability to be able to have that fire in his belly. Some players, some managers, just Steven Gerrard's at the same club, signed a new contract the same day that Henderson wanted out of there. So, you know, different strokes for different folks. Things work differently for some people.
How bad a look would it be, though, for the Saudi Pro League if Benzema was to leave?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not good for any of the players that are wanting out. I think they obviously want people to go there to grow it. Obviously, they've got bigger things in mind. The World Cup in 34, like, I went to Qatar many years before it became being the World Cup because they're obviously planning to do this and they want the players over there to be ambassadors like Cristiano Ronaldo is doing. That's the reality of it. But some players are going there and they're probably thinking, you know, the standard isn't where it... I don't know what they expected, if I'm being honest. Because what did they expect? If you look at the squads that they have, by bringing in a couple of players, it might raise the level and everyone looking at the league, but the quality of everyday training isn't going to be the same. So, I mean, I don't hold it against the players for going, but I'm certainly sure that the Saudi League do not want the players to be wanting to leave at the first moment they can. That's the thing that hits home to me. The first opportunity they can get out, they're trying to. Some are.
It's one thing, Jordan Henderson leaving. It'll be a completely different kettle of fish if Karim Benzema was to go for all the reasons that Melissa mentioned there. Aside of Ronaldo, he is the poster boy for the Saudi Pro League, and it would just be such a bad look for them. And I think they'd lose so much face if he was to go.
An intriguing element of this as well is that Benzema, usually when he wants to send a message, he does these cryptic social media posts. This wasn't that. There was direct contact to L'Équipe and other French media to say, where has the story come from? It's completely false. I'm settled. I'm fine. I'm okay. And that I found interesting, that it was a direct contact from him to set the record straight.
OK, we're going to break away from transfers again just for a moment because it is Carabao Cup semi-final, second leg time, and it's Fulham who've never been to a League Cup final against the 9 times winners Liverpool. Here's Jurgen Klopp.
Well, Jurgen, tonight the second leg of your 10th semi-final with Liverpool. But this occasion, is it as special as the first all those years ago?
Oh, 10 semi-finals. That's not a bad number. No. How often did we go through?
Well, I was about to get to that next. Out of the other 9, 8 occasions, so pretty good pedigree.
Who knocked us out? That's my question. So, no, it's good we are here. It's an intense period. It's a very good opponent. I watched yesterday the press conference of Marco. Most important game of the season so far. And for some of them, it's how you make it, what you make of it. And that's an interesting question, to be honest. So if you would ask other players and other clubs who won a lot, then they would probably say, yeah, number 1, Premier League, number 2, Champions League or European League, then FA Cup, and then League Cup. But we are here. And we were at Wembley and played the final there. And I can tell you, it's worth each yard. You run for it. It's absolutely exceptional. It's sensational. So that the competition is not always my best friend because we have, from time to time, we don't know exactly where we fit the games in. But now it's all good, and now we have to play a really good game because otherwise we will not be at Wembley.
Well, as we've touched on already, historically you have had great success in semi-finals. So what is so key to that on nights like this, these big occasions?
Oh, I would have a recipe for that. I would write a book, sell it, and first and foremost, the second leg in the semi-final is definitely the first result has no real impact, so it's not important because are not here to defend the result or whatever. We are here to win a football game. That will be difficult enough, and yeah, that's pretty much all. Be just as good as you can in 2-leg semi-finals. What there are usually, you have anyway. One away game, and you have to make that it doesn't count, actually. So we have to calm the atmosphere down tonight with our performance. Can we do that? I don't know, but we will try it.
Kick-off at 8, goals as they go in, right here on Sky Sports News. Now, when we went to the last break, I teased Leanne and said we're going to talk Manchester United. We didn't. We will when we come back from this one. We'll also have news on Celtic, Aston Villa, West Ham and more. That's all on the way. See you in a moment. The breaking news is Kieran Trippier news. Melissa.
Yes, Bayern Munich sporting director Christoph Freund, he's confirmed to our colleagues at Sky Germany that their pursuit of Kieran Trippier is indeed over. It is done.
Did that move make any sense for anybody, Darmesh?
Well, obviously for Bayern Munich it must have done because they wanted him. We were saying cynically before, not for sale, but were they relaying that message to Bayern Munich because they kept coming back with bids? In fairness to Kieran Trippier as well, by all accounts he's handled this really well because he has kind of intimated, you know, maybe open to a move like Bayern Munich, but has so much respect for Newcastle United as well that he knew that if it didn't work out, he was going to abide by the decision that Newcastle United made. And that decision is, you're not going anywhere, so he stays put.
He does stay put. All right, jumping away from transfers yet again. Conti Cup. Reading against Arsenal. Last time we were with Jamie Weir, he said there'd be more goals. He was right. Jamie.
I was right, Mike, and I meant more Arsenal goals when I said that, and that has proven to be the case. A lovely slick move, one-touch football. Steph Catley whipped the ball in from the left, and Stina Blackstenius was there to volley from close range to make it 2-0. An assist, and now a goal for Stina Blackstenius, who, along with her fellow Scandinavian Frida Manum, is at the heart of everything that Arsenal do. When they're in full flow attacking, they are a joy to behold, and this could turn very ugly for Reading indeed, because it is all Arsenal. Reading can barely get out of their own defensive third, and I think there will be more goals, and I think they'll be to the team in red. It's currently 2-0 to the defending champions.
Jamie Weir, thank you very much. Right, we got there. We are going to speak Manchester United. Anthony Martial has been confirmed that he'll be out for 10 weeks after surgery. Darmesh, will this change Erik ten Hag's plans in this window?
As it stands, I don't think it will change much with regard to Manchester United's transfer plans in this transfer window. As you said, it's groin surgery. He will miss 10 weeks. But we know that Manchester United are planning without Anthony Martial in the long term already. His contract is up in the summer. They've decided not to trigger the one-year option. He's decided that he's going to stay. He's not going to play for a little while anyway. There's a chance, who knows, that he might have actually played his last game for United already. But does that mean United will need to go into the market and replace him? Probably not, because the likes of Martial and Jadon Sancho have hardly played for United this season anyway. So who would they actually be bringing in to replace? It's one of those where they've basically decided Martial isn't part of the plans at all. United, throughout this window, have been keeping their eyes open, and that was before and after the Martial injury anyway. And it's predominantly the loan market that they're looking at. There was talk of Eric Choupo-Moting from Bayern Munich, Bobby Broby from Ajax, who Erik ten Hag knows really well. But our information at the moment is that there's no player that is hot at the moment with regard to potential incomings at Manchester United. That's not to say that they won't go into the market. The last two transfer windows, Manchester United, on deadline day, have made loan signings. Marcel Sabitzer in the January window last year, and in the summer transfer window, they spent big on permanent signings, and right on deadline day, they brought in Altay Bayindir for around £5 million on a permanent deal, but they brought in Sergio Reguilon and Sofian Amrabat on loan. So it can't be ruled out, but as it stands, it's not something that is hot for Manchester United just now.
Leanne, Darmesh is teasing us. He's saying, no, but maybe. Do United need to go into the market? Do they need to get better players in?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going on for a long time that we've needed better players, but I think the best thing for me this window is we have a new chief, sporting director at the club, Omar Barada. I think that for me has been the best signing of the window that we could ever do. I think, I cannot believe that Anthony Martial has been at Manchester United for 9 years. He'll be coming into his 9th year. And, I think he's one of those players that people say he's got a bit about him, but to have been at Manchester United for that long and not really produced. He's had a couple of moments of brilliance, don't get me wrong, but to have been at a club like that, for that long, for me. But the fact that Manchester United got the new, sporting director in now,
CEO.
10 years without one,
yeah.
It's incredible to me. So hopefully, to Jim Ratcliffe, we're starting to see only 25%. We wanted the whole club sold, let's be honest, the fans did. But we're seeing small changes. And the fact that we've got it from Manchester City, come from Barcelona as well, there's something in there. I like the fact that the wheels are turning, but right now, who's out there that we could potentially get? You know, a lot of people saying, oh, you know, Osimhen is the only number 9 that's really available. But for me, Manchester United, you know, you mentioned Sabitzer earlier, but without Weghorst, those types of players come into the club for me. How is this even possible? And then furthermore, Amrabat comes to the club. Everyone that comes to Manchester United right now doesn't seem to be thriving. How many signings can you say we've made where they've actually, apart from Bruno Fernandes a couple of years ago in the January transfer window, but other than that...
Why?
Honestly, I've been asking myself this question for a long time, even going back to, you know, Paul Pogba, all that during that time. Like, they come to us with all this prospect and people say, you know, sometimes the shirt's too heavy. I'm not having that all the time. I'm not having that anymore because, you know, Amrabat had a brilliant World Cup, come to Manchester United. He was playing left-back at times when Luke Shaw was out. So, you know, but he hasn't really done anything. So when you look at the signings that we've made, Donny van der Beek's now gone to Eintracht Frankfurt, but there isn't really any players that you're looking at Man United and you think, you know, when I went to Old Trafford last week, I'm looking at the stalls outside and there's not one player that I think, you know what, I really want to be, I want to be like you when I was a kid. And that's genuinely the honest truth. Manchester United back in the day, Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, Roy Keane, the list was endless of legends of our club. Now you look at it and you think, who's my favourite player at Manchester United? Probably Luke Shaw. That's the honest truth. Whereas before, I could reel off, you know, 4 or 5 players that I'd be thinking, I want to watch them, I want to be like them when I'm older, watch everything they do. Right now, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, the consistency just isn't there.
Yeah, that's because they've been signing players without any sort of sporting structure, a successful sporting structure, a sporting structure that's in sync. And today actually marks 1 month of Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe's stake being confirmed to the New York Stock Exchange. And in that time, they've made one significant move, which is Barada's CEO. And there was a very senior executive from a London rival club that messaged me when that happened and said, now they've got our attention. Because when Ineos took charge and it was, you know, ordained that they're going to be in sporting control of the club, a lot of the rivals thought, well, how is this going to work? It's only a 25% stake. The Glazers still have, you know, the decisive say in matters. Can they work together? Can you separate sporting operations from the commercial activities of a club? I think in this first significant step where they've gone and poached somebody from Manchester City, a man who's also been very successful under different guises for Barcelona, that is psychologically huge. The statement it sends to football, to people within United, but also to other executives that they can lure in terms of sporting directors, heads of recruitment. It does make a huge difference. And I know people want the headline names. They want the mega money signings to talk about during the transfer window. But United have done that, regularly have spent ridiculous money on players without a proper plan, a glued-up plan. They've just bought
Anthony,
whoever
Sancho.
a manager has wanted. Even Erik ten Hag has got players he wanted that don't make long-term sense for the club. And now what United are saying is, hang on, that's how we're in a position where we can't really spend, we can't sell. We've given out duff contracts that have now put us in a very awkward situation, which they're trying to overhaul that process. And the way to solve all this is to cure the sporting structure. If we get that in place, if we are world-class off the pitch, that's how we return to being world-class on the pitch.
It's easy for fans, it's natural for fans, bring in a signing. We want to bring in a signing. Ineos have come in, they've taken control of the sporting operations of the club. I don't think their biggest worry is, in a January transfer window, do we need to bring in someone to cover a right wing? They've said, this is the issue at the club, let's go to the top. So now they're trying to build this structure. Chief executives in. The next recruitment position is likely to be sporting director or sporting directors. Recruitment team. Suddenly you'll have a structure in place and an infrastructure in place whereby everyone is talking from the same page and doing signings from the same page. So it won't be down to one particular manager to say, I want that player, or we better get him that player. Because what has happened is in the past 10 to 15 years, Manchester United has been operating in a way that has been unsustainable. Simply because they've gone into a position where instead of changing the structure, they've changed the manager. and they've changed the manager, and not one manager bears any resemblance to the philosophy of the previous one. And what ends up happening is one manager says, I don't like these players, I need 200 million so I can get my own players in. That's fine, does it? Manager doesn't work, the next manager wants to do the same. And in the end, what ends up happening, you end up with a mishmash, imbalanced squad that Manchester United have now, and Eric Ten Hag is going into the market, trying to bring in players that he knows. Ineos have said, this is wrong now. And the Glazers have effectively admitted that they've been wrong, because they brought in someone who's got a 25% minority investment, but with that minority investment, they've said, you are in charge of the football operations. By saying you're in charge of the football operations, that is an admission that they've got it completely wrong for the last 10 to 15 years.
Can I just say something really simple as well?
Real quick, yeah.
Really quickly. I love the fact that Manchester United have done this so quickly. It was like almost done in the back door, and then it happened. Because look at the Frankie de Jong thing a couple of years ago. It was ongoing, and it never got done. So credit to the club for actually making this happen in a real quick way.
See, I told you I'd let you talk about Manchester United. Does sound like you fans are going to have to be patient for a while, though. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more news on West Ham. We know the Phillips deal's almost done. News on further potential signings. Plus, we've got some outgoings at Aston Villa and Celtic. See you in a moment. Half-time, Reading against Arsenal. Arsenal lead 3-0. Updates when we finish at 8 here on Sky Sports News. Now, we know that West Ham are closing in on Calvin Phillips. More news coming out of West Ham, Dharmesh.
Yeah, throughout this transfer window, it's our understanding that they're after a left-sided forward player, and talks are advancing now between West Ham United and the Danish club Nordsjælland over the 19-year-old winger Ibrahim Osman. It's understood the fee under discussion, because it is a permanent deal, because his contract is up in the summer, it's for around £15 million. He's a graduate of the Right to Dream Academy, the same academy that Mohamed Kudus came from as well. West Ham still looking at the Al Ittihad forward Jota as well, completely out of favour in the Saudi Pro League. That could prove more problematic. He's purportedly on around £200,000 a week. But the Ibrahim Osman one, that one looks like it's advancing.
OK, as usual, we're galloping through because we're running out of time. Melissa, Brentford closing in on a goalkeeper. Tell us more.
Yes, they've agreed a fee of around £2.6 million with the Swedish club Elfsborg to sign the goalkeeper Håkon Vladimarsson. He's 22, he's been capped 5 times by Iceland. He's flying into London to complete his medical. Interesting with this is, what does it mean for David Raya? We know he joined Arsenal on loan, but there was an option of £27 million to make that deal permanent. But it was an option that would turn into an obligation if certain conditions were met, including how many appearances he makes. And he's on course to make quite a few, so keep an eye out there.
Absolutely. Dharmesh, departure at Celtic.
Not quite. Let's not scare Celtic fans just yet. But
Sorry,
they've received a bid. They've received a bid from Atletico Madrid for the highly rated Matt O'Reilly. It's an initial loan plus an obligation to buy, but he signed a new contract last year. It's up until 2027, but there has been interest from Girona and Inter Milan, so, you know, a bid for him, it shouldn't have come out of the blue, but Brendan Rodgers considers him as a really key player of his squad.
Really quickly, Leandro Dendoncker, what's the news with him?
Yeah, he's in Rome, been having a medical ahead of a move to Napoli. We can see pictures of him now. It's understood he'll move on loan from Aston Villa to Napoli, and there's an loan, an option to make it permanent for around £8.5 million.
Dharmesh, Melissa, Leanne, thank you very much. Great to work with you at last, Leanne. There is Carabao Cup semi-final, second leg at Craven Cottage. Fulham against Liverpool. Liverpool lead 2-1. Fulham, last year, went out to Crawley in August. This year, they can turn over Liverpool. They're in the League Cup final. More next.